In this video, dive into the movie Sisu Road to Revenge. We will discuss the storyline, summarize the plot, and explore the cast and characters. Additionally, we will cover the movie's production details and box office performance. Finally, we will provide reviews and share personal reactions. So let's get started. The films open with a narration about the end of World War II. Finland had to cede some Karelian territory to the Soviet Union, forcing many Finns out of their homes and onto the Finnish side of the border. In a Siberian prison, a Soviet Red Army commander, Igor, is freed from his cell. He is brought to meet with a KGB officer who knows that Dragunov was responsible for the murder of the Artemy's family, which fueled his rage and turned him to indie killing machine known as Kolstai. The officer offers Dragunov payment for finding Artemy and killing him for good. Artemy began with his journey back home with all the recovered wood in his truck. Dragunov and his guns track Artemy down and prepare to execute him in his truck. Sensing danger, Artemy quickly kills most of the soldiers, including running one guy over halfway, and reviving his truck up so the guy flies back into Dragunov's windshield. After killing most of the men, Artemy aims his rifle at Dragunov but ends up leaving him alone, not recognizing who he is at first. Dragunov is met by the comrades on a motorcycle and continue his pursuit. The bikers catch up to Artemy, with one of them managing to shoot him in the cheek. Most of the bikers end up crushed, shot blown up, or even beheaded by Artemy method. An explosion goes off, forcing Artemy to take a detour and put out the fire separating through the wood. He also takes time to cool the truck down and tend to his wound. Meanwhile, Dragunov orders reinforcement to unleash hell. A few fighter jets come to go after Artemy. He gets back to behind the wheel and briefly hides in a barn, but drives quickly as he just starts to bomb the place. Artemy manages to take down in the woods by stopping and causing its wing to get clipped, sending the pilot into a fiery crash. Artemy waits until he's safe and quiet to keep going. Another fighter pilot comes up on Artemy from the side of a cliff. He manages to evade the gunfire, so the pilot ejects himself and lets the jet fly toward the Artemy's truck. He shoots one of the straps of his truck, then hits the brake, sending a few pieces of wood forward to make a ramp and send the jet back by briefly before it crashes. More jets come and drop bombs on the place, killing the pilot and crushing Artemy to drive the truck off the cliff and into the river. The truck is gone, but Artemy gets himself and the dog out of the water. He makes a raft from the wood and comes upon a tank. Artemy gathers a ton of explosive as he drives his tank toward the Soviet border, where Dragunov and his gun are waiting for him. He picks up speed by spitting fuel into the engine before detonating the explosive, flipping the entire tank over the border and over Dragunov's head. The tank crashes and breaks apart. Artemy lets the dog go free before he captured, as he KGB wants him alive. Dragunov takes Artemy prisoner on board a train heading back to Siberia, when he is brutally whipped in the back. Dragunov enters and tells Artemy he is the man who killed his family, which he recalls because the only face Dragunov ever remembered was the Artemy's oldest son, who stood before Dragunov to protect his mother and baby brother. Dragunov brags about how he chopped them into pieces and fed them to stray dogs. Then tells Artemy that he is an abomination and not some great legend. Artemy takes his knife and goes through the train cart of sleeping soldier, trying to move past from them to not awake any of them. After making it past the first cart, the second one is more difficult. He has to throw a pickaxe at one soldier who spots him, and then stab to death another in his bed. He makes it out of that cart before the soldier underneath him is woken up by the dripping blood and failing body. In the last cart, Artemy ends up stepping on broken glass after one soldier drops his bottle. Eventually, the soldier wakes up, and Artemy has to start killing them. Dragunov in the cart up ahead, overheard the commotion and uncoupled the train, leaving Atomy behind, and Atomy finds a gigantic missile in his cart. Dragunov is waiting to collect his payment for getting Atomy. However, Dragunov turns on the KGB officer and his men killing Atom and collecting his money. Atomy ignites the missile and rises toward the Dragunov cart, crashing through the window and getting into a brawl with his nemesis. Dragunov puts up a good fight and kicks Atomy back toward the missile. He gives Atomy a chance to spite out. He is loud but Atomy spied out a bolt that he took off the missile's holding. The missile comes loose and moves toward Dragunov, holding to the end of train. The missile drills into the Dragunov's skull before it explodes gloriously. At the Finnish border, Atomy makes it on a cart with all of his recovered wood. He shows his paper to Roger God, who recognizes Atomy and salutes him. Atomy in the process of rebuilding his new home. He got the dog back. A group of loggers approach him with tools, and Atomy thinks they are here to fight him as well. However, one of the men says he looks like a good some help. Atomy is visibly more very gratitude, and the men proceed to help. Following the end of the World War II, Finnish ex-commando Atomy copy returned to his old home on the Soviet side of the border to recover the wood from his old home, so he can rebuild it in a new territory. A former Soviet Red Army commander named Igor Dragunov, the man responsible for the murder of Atomy's wife and son, is freed from prison by KGB official who became aware of Atomy's presence and want Dragunov to get rid of him. Dragunov brings several men on motorcycle and plan to after Atomy, but more succeed or survive. Eventually knocks the run Atomy off the road, but he recovers his wood and attempts to make it across the Soviet border by flipping tank over it, but the tank is destroyed and Dragunov has Atomy captured. On board the train heading back to the Siberia, Dragunov reveals who is in Atomy after having him tortured. Fueled by the newfound desire for revenge, Atomy frees himself and kills most of the Soviet soldiers before writing a missile to face off the Dragunov. After a brawl, Atomy lets the missile crash and blow up Dragunov. Sisu Road to Revenge came out Friday. It's a sequel to the 2022 film Sisu, but it did not put a 2 in the title. So some friends of mine saw the trailer and were not aware it was a sequel. I think that's wise marketing. This is an old school standalone approach to a sequel that you would not even have to know there was another one to understand or appreciating the story. So yeah, say this one first if you want to. You have my permission. But if you like either one of them, I recommend watching the other. The appeal of Sisu and now of the Sisu movie series is pretty straightforward. Atomic Corp is a particularly Finnish bad motherfucker, a rugged and scared ex-commando who looks more like a former than an action star. Is his power superpower? He will never give up or give in. So he goes to hell and then back to hell again, and pretty much just gets dunked repeatedly in hell until he's totally soaked in it, but he keeps crawling his way out again, and anybody who does anything to him along the way dies horribly at his hands. The first movie would be a clever and well executed action revenge movie in any era, but it happened to come out when it was particularly enjoyable to see some faces get fucked up. It took place at the end of the World War II, when a band of fleeing Nazis tried to steal the gold nuggets Atomy just found, and got elaborately joyously slaughtered for it. In Chapter 4, the legend we learned the backstory that he was a Finnish commando during the Winter War, when he murdered of his family Johan Wick add him into the becoming a mythical one-man death scare, known for killing over 300 Soviet soldiers. In Sisu Road to Revenge, he will get a surprise opportunity to directly avenge his family while just trying to accomplish one task that he refuses to give up him. See, he crosses over the border to his old house in a part of Finland now annexed by the Soviet Union. He uses chalk to number the boards that make up his cabin, takes them apart one by one, piled them on his truck. I was hoping they would also take apart the dialogue next to the house. Even it would be easier to just put in the truck intact. And I got my wish. Then he hits the road thinking it is road to Finland. Not even to revenge, but it's boat. The power that he know about Atomi's visit. So a KGB agent goes to prison in Siberia to release the infamous war criminal Igor. He's the one who killed Atomi's son and chopped him up with a shovel. So this guy can stop the monster he created. They will give him his freedom. Writer director Helander is openly inspired by the Rainbow movies and is currently set to direct Stallone-less and a Lakhoty kind of evil version of Rambo being recruited out of the work campaign. So there is. He just wants to get out after building his house, and it's largely a chase movie. There is clearly a big George Miller influences, particularly the Road Warrior. Soviet soldier with ghoul wielding mask like helmet, chases truck on the motorcycle. Throw Molotov cocktail at it. Climb on top. I like he is not only trying to get away, but to protect pieces of wood from damage. Even better, the truck does not surface, so his spoiler turns the pieces of cabin into a raft. Before that, he impressive a way to knock some off the truck just in time to make a ram to launch a plane trying to dive bomb him. There is a bite of the Fast and Furious or Transporter too. Approach to physics which is way better than the stupid other kind and suck. I sense a bite of Spielberg in the way he continuously faces new obstacles and has to be improvised. Things go comically wrong and he always gets back up and silently figure out the next move. But he is nothing like Indiana Jones, more like Rambo and Johannes Lane in their respective sequel because he can accomplish all these, but not without going through the tremendous trial of physics rain, pain and injury. There is a specific references and one upping of Die Hard, where he has to walk barefoot over broken bottles and then spiral fast backward on a damned so they stick into his back too. This is a good international genre movie, so openly finishing its star and attitude, not compromising anything. Helander still uses his same cinematographer, editor, and production designer, and I believe stunt coordinated woman Nesso in Finnish. It's always fun to see them being psychotic bastard, and this time they get to go filled with the Russian accent. More importantly, we have seen Lang limit committing violence in Don't Rebrat 1 and 2 and Avatar 1 and 2. So there could not really be a more fitting opponent for this specific hero. I don't think one exists. If there is a next time top, make him defeat a ridiculously fit and vain young dude. Just in case there might be some guys on the older side who would appreciate the confidence boost. Who know? I doubt it, but it's possible. Sisu Road to Revenge combines so many of my favorite type of movie. Atomi's mythic presence and depth of dialogue and his music by Joris Sopa and the way he picks up enemies in the eventually graphic movie is like a slasher movie. The elegantly simple construction of the story is like a really good action movie or western, and the imaginatively ridiculous uses of various weapons and vehicles are like in different type of really good action movie. Some movies with these qualities can be a little too surgery. I enjoy watching them and appreciate the fun time, but forget them quickly. That may not be the case with his one, for the simple fact that Helander have found a way to end on genuinely emotional note that adds weight to the whole thing. I will discuss specific in a spoiler post script below. He said in interview that he loves where this end up and then it would make a good ending to the story. But he has an idea for a third one that he might want to make. I like both options. I'm grateful that I got my wish from the Sisu review, which is just for him to make his next movie in a reasonable amount of time. He seemed to be on a roll now, and you won't want to get in his way. I was so surprised that this is a fall movies was able to genuinely move me at the end. He's made it home. He's putting the house back together. Suddenly, a group of men carrying hand axes and hammer, and things approach. I think you probably guessed where they are for, like I did. But both Atomy and his co-resumed are there for a fight. So he cleared his tilt and grips his axe. We thought you could use some help. One of them says, those are not weapons they brought. They are tools, of course. But if Atomy chokes up, and the guy tells him he does not need to say anything. Man that attaches my heartstring to a motorized reel and it cranks him. Even the legend, the immortal, the Finnish Baba Yaga, the guy who simply can't tell because he refuses turn out to have feelings underneath. He had to all it entirely by himself, and the idea that somebody would actually do something nice for him, that he could have some help, just overwhelm him. They know that he could use it and so could never articulate it. In the photos during the end credit, we even see him having a laugh while they are building. He made friends. He enjoyed a joke. Maybe told one. I have that for him. And I think again this is a good Rambo parallel because it's a little like the structure that makes First Blood. Such a classic. Rambo goes through all that and then he breaks down, bearing to clonal, and we find out what's been going through his mind the whole time. Tommy would never do that, but he is just as broken and emotionally repressed as Rambo, and is just as powerful when it came out. It's a movie about funny way to kill terrible people, but it's also so much more. The best part about Sisu was its nonsense approach. A thrilling action movie that did not indulge in unnecessary subplot, resulting in an underline inducing glory punching affair. The sequel Road to Revenge maintained the same approach. This time the protagonist Antomy Gorby takes on the Red Army. Atomy and killed 300 Soviet soldiers in the Winter War single-handed to seek revenge for death of his family, and he had become a legend. 2 years after his gold discovery, Seso embarked on a journey to his family house in Karelia. He also lived there with his wife and 2 sons before they were brutally murdered by Soviet soldiers. Since in 1944, Finland and given up Karelia to the Soviet Union as part of the space raid, Atomy decided to travel home, dismantle the house he would be built, and rebuild it somewhere safe. But soon after Tommy crossed the border, Atomy was heading to Finland when his path was blocked by a Soviet army van. He figured that it would cause trouble, and the moment he noticed the Molotov cocktail in the hand of one of the soldiers, he knew he had to act immediately. Atomy cleverly managed to take down all the soldiers, but he spared Igor because he did not wish to cause harm to someone who did not try to actively shoot him down. Atomy had no idea that the man he spared was the one who would be relentlessly kill his family. Igor now had a fair idea of the man he was dealing with. He realized that taking down Atomy would not be an easy task, but he was ready for the challenge. Igor instructed the soldier on motorcycle and even pilot to take down Atomy. He was being attacked from all sides, just as he was done killing the motorcyclist. He had to now find a solution to protect himself from the airplane. Repeated shots were fired, and he ended up taking shelter in a barn. He figured there was no way he could protect himself there. So he goes to hit and road again. But navigating the road with the airplane constantly targeting him was not easy, and he ended up driving his truck into a lake. Atomy was almost about to drown, but then he released his dogs and used them as a makeshift raft to float on the water. As he was sailing by, he stumbled upon his abandoned tank. Atomy loaded the logs onto the tank and used dynamite, landmine, and fuel to summon capsuled his way into the Soviet camp. But unfortunately, his plan did not pan out the way he would be intended. The tank was destroyed due to the impact, and Atomy was left terribly injured. He had no choice left but to surrender. But after stepping out of the tank, he had pushed a sharp knife blade into his leg. As expected, Atomy was repeatedly tortured. He was hung from the ceiling of a train wagon like fresh meat, and a hot iron was used to be repeatedly strike him. He was bleeding from his whole body when Igor stepped in. Hubri realizes that Tommy had extreme tolerance for physical torture. But the one thing that completely destroyed him was the murder of his family. So Igor intentionally spat out exactly how brutality he would be killed at Tommy's wife and son. He added his elder son, Ottawa, was feisty and brave, And he remembered a little boy because he had attempted to attack Igor in the eye out of nowhere. He would try to put up a fight to protect his mother and younger siblings until his dying breath. Igor looked at Tommy in his eyes and promised to put out the fire in him. He believed that Tommy was a high photography section and he promised to end the legend around him, turn him onto a piece of flesh without any memory, and use the logs of his house for railroad ties. Igor did not realize that everything he would be sad added to fuel to the fire in Tommy. As soon as Igor left, Tommy gathered all his strength and fury to free himself from the iron clasp, and he succeeded. The soldier stations outside the wagon where Tommy was locked up heard a loud thud. They were frightened when they saw through the small window that Tommy had freed himself. One of them decided to step in his track, and well, you can already guess what happened to the soldier. Tommy was unstoppable. The soldier we had gone in the check on Tommy had assumed that he did not have any weapon, but he had no idea what he was dealing with. Tommy's son pulled the knife blade out of the flesh and held it close while walking from one wagon to another. He tried to move it silently because he did not want to create chaos before he reached his target Igor. Tommy tried his best to be quiet, but it was a couple of soldiers had stepped out to relieve themselves, and Tommy had no choices but to kill them. Undoubtedly, he could have killed out a soldier on the train with ease, but he was an honorable man, and he did not want to pull Bill's blood for the sake of. In the sequel, there was a few moments of dry humor, such as when Tommy was walking on top of the train and suddenly a thick pipe flew in his direction and ended up falling into one of the weapons that was full of Soviet soldiers. They tried to shoot him down, but we are talking about an invisible man fueled by the rage of revenge. There is no way one can stop him. Tommy grabbed hold of two machine guns and fired repeatedly until the wagon went completely silent. Igor was in the wagon next to the one Tommy was in. He heard the gunshot and immediately realized that it must be him. He would figure that the legend around him was indeed true, and the only way to escape his fate was to unsecure the coupling. Tommy's was Igor's wagon take off, and while he was frustrated at first, he soon noticed the ballistic missile right inside him. He immediately decided to use it as a quick fixer booster to catch up with Igor. Now Igor figured there was no way he could stop Tommy, but he also had his eyes on the money he was promised by his KGB handler. So immediately after disjointing the coupling, he shot a KGB agent he was dealing with. His handler offered him the money he was promised, hoping that would be enough for Igor to let it go for him. But Igor closed him is nonetheless. Just when Igor thought he had made the best out of the situation, Tommy came flying in. Tommy used his bare hand to repeatedly pummel Igor. But then again, he was wounded and not in his physically best form. Igor overpowered him and struck him repeatedly. During Sisu, road to revenge's ending, Igor grabbed hold of a shovel and used it to strike at Tommy. He intentionally did so since he used a shovel to get rid of Tommy's family as well. Now the missile was still secured to the base. After it was already ignited, Igor did not realize that Tommy's and a plan. He assumed it was our 40 man who refuses to die. In the end, when Igor asked Tommy if he had any last word, he simply spat out a screw from his mouth. Igor finally connected the dots, and by the time he realizes that Igor had released the missile, it was already too late to escape. Igor made an attempt to run, and for a second, the missile stopped right in front of his face, and he briefly thought maybe it was not his day to die yet. But he was proved wrong. The missile ultimately consumed Igor, and the vegans exploded, creating rubble in a surrounding area. Tommy, understanding, finally returned home to Finland. He was in a bloody state, but he still managed to carry the logs to the border. When he handed his passport to the border soldier, they saluted him as soon as they read his name. Tommy was a national hero, and he would be finally returned to the place where he could spend the rest of his life in peace. In Sisu, Road to Revenge ending, we learned that Atomis started with his dream project of rebuilding his house. He did not have his family by his side, but at least our house would signify that they were finally in a safe place, and their soul could rest in peace. Also, even for everything that our duo has been through, Atami's fusy poodle managed to survive, and he continued to be this brave man's only true companion. Atomis was busy building the house when a group of men approached him. He instinctively assumed that they had arrived to cause him harm. But when one of men stated that they wanted to help him build his house, he was moved to tears. He had spent such a brutal and merciless existence that a certain kindness and genuine respect surprised him. Perhaps in that moment, Atomis felt relieved knowing that there was some good left in the world. And although he did not have his own sons around to help him building to the house, the men in the community showed up and supported him, while he had always preferred living by himself. The final scene suggested that sometime even a legendary man like Atomis Scorpio would appreciate some help and support of his community. 2 years after gold discovery, Sisu embarked on a journey to his family house in Kerala. He also lived there with his wife and 2 sons before they were brutally murdered by Soviet soldiers since in 1944. Adamus' family was brutally murdered by Igor Dragunov. Their bodies were dismembered with a shawl, and they were later fed to be homeless and stray dogs. Igor was held in prison in Siberia, and he was released under the condition that he destroys atomic since his story and affected the reputation of the Soviet army. He knew he had to act immediately. Atomis cleverly managed to take down all the soldiers, but he spared Igor because he did not wish to cause harm to someone who did not try to actively shoot him down. Atomi had no idea that the man he spared was the one who would be relentlessly killed his family. Igor now had a fair idea of the man he was dealing with. He realizes that taking down Atomis would not be an easy task, but he was ready for the challenge. Igor trusted interested soldier on motorcycle and even pilot to take down Atomi. He was being attacked from all sides. Just as he was done killing the motorcyclist, he had to now find a solution to protect himself from the airplane. Repeated shots were fired, and he ended up taking shelter in a barn. He figured was made so he could protect himself there. So he goes to hit the road again. As he was sailing by, he stumbled upon an abandoned tank. Adamis loaded the logs into the tank and used dynamite, landmine, and fuel to somehow captured his way into a Soviet camp. But unfortunately, his plan did not pan out the way he would be intended. The tank was destroyed due to the impact, and Thomas was left terribly injured. He had no choices left but to surrender. But before stepping out of the tank, he had to push the sharp knife blade into his leg. As expected, Atomis was repeatedly tortured. He was hung for the ceiling of a train wagon like fresh meat, and a hot iron was used to repeatedly strike him. He was bleeding from his whole body when Igor stepped in. Hilbert realizes Atomis an extreme tolerance for physical torture. But the one thing that completely destroyed him was the murder of his family. So Igor internationally spat out exactly how brutality he would be killed Atomis' wife and son. He added his elder son, Ottawa was feisty and brave, and he remembered the little boy because he had attempted to attack Igor in the eye out of nowhere. He would try to put up a fight to protect his mother and younger sibling. In 2022, the Finnish India action movie Sisu had a look of one-hit wonder, pitting a greaser prospector against an entire platform of Nazis. Writer-director Jalmari Helander hated a lesson of George Miller's Mad Max. Fury wrote principally that there is a serious cinematic value in going pedal to the metal along a single, straight narrative line. That profitable sleeper hit now yields this which somehow choice follow-up, which somehow feels more expensive while still choking in under 90 minutes. Having seen out his SS indomitable hero Atomy, gains our tragic backstory and a new, vicious post-war in that named Red Army. No unnecessary obstacles have been placed between the audiences and good time at a movie. We got one scene of Atomy dismantling his family, home beam by beam, and one scene of Dragnov being sprung from jail before the parents wrecked in the back road of Soviet-occupied Finland. Helander has the voice of a kid playing war game in the woods. You half expect someone's mom to call everybody in 40. It may be cartoonish look sharp or regrettably misplaced, but the comic strip similar simplicity serves as a rebook to the not your blockbuster. You don't need excessive CGI with the practical special effect as potentially compelling as Tommila's Blooded. Different face the script meanwhile offer one grace note after another. Those beams become a memento, then a life wrapped in a new beginning. Nike's protagonist Valentia holds on to the essential, torches the rest, and goes harder and faster for it. His film showed raising huge cheer in Kiev and indeed everywhere else. Sisu Road to Revenge is out in 20 November in Australia and 21 November in UK and US. This article was amended on 21 November 2025. An earlier version suggested the movie was filmed in Finland. However, it was a shot in Estonia. Sisu Road to Revenge is a brutal action movie that purposefully goes for a lean and mean execution. But that does not mean there is not a deeper story going on under the surface. The sequel 2022 Sisu. It brings back the Finnish atomic orbe, known to the public as the immortal for his exceptional battlefield career. The film focuses on his effort to bring the house he once had with his family back into the Finnish territory, which catches the attention of the Soviet Union. What follows in an action movie that goes back and forth from darkly hilarious to jaw-droppingly brutal, all while exploring a story about trauma and loss. Sisu Road to Revenge is a wild escalation of the first film, pitting Scorpion against his Russian's equivalent and steadily revealing just how personal their bond is. Dragunov is quickly established as a former agent of the Soviet Union whose previous crusade across Finland killed countless innocent. This includes Korpi's family. Reasoning that Dragunov is the only person alive who can contend with the immortal. The Soviet leadership frees him for prison and set him off against Scorpio. Much of the film's now Scorpio's attempt to reach the Finnish border with the remains of his family home. While Sisu benefited from a tense game of cat and mouse between the Scorpio and the Nazi soldier who encountered him, Sisu Road to the Revenge is far more rooted in a personal conflict. Dragunov is identified in a direct contrast to Scorpio, with both men having similar skill set and disaggregate for their enemies. Both men seem to have a similar perspective on killing in the moment, but deal with the memory of direction very differently. Dragunov bragged to Scorpio that he screams of his victim blend together, and the character is portrayed as an almost cartoonishly black and white villain. However, it's somewhat similar to Scorpio's on disregarded for his enemies. However, while Dragunov takes some pride in his work and seeks to break the immortal for the thrill of it, Scorpio is shown to be haunted by this past. In the film's final moment, even people coming to help him, his hordes initially come across as a threat. Scorpio is visibly taken aback when he does not have to fight a man, and is almost tearful when they help. This is a clear display of the lingering humanity that gives Scorpio to the memory of his family. It's something played with slightly in the first film, but become more pronounced in the final moment of Road to Revenge. Sisu Road to Revenge is a fairly self-contained story, concluding with Scorpio envisioning his family by killing Dragunov before completing his journey home. The films end with Scorpio reconstructing his family home in Finnish land with the job help of the local. Ensuring Scorpio could be drawn into the further conflict with the Soviet, especially if his action in that territory were considered an act of the aggression by the army. The Finnish government could require Gorby of an entire adventure, or even just an innocent civilian could call upon him for help. As for this writing, the future of Gorby is up in the air. Both the film's writer, director, Helander and star Jorma have expressed interest in a potential third film, but there is no concrete plan for a follow-up. The ending of Sisu, A Road to Revenge reflects this. The final shot of the film, framed like photograph of Corby and his new Finnish neighbors building the house, could be seen as induction into their community. This could give Corby plenty of reasons to defend his throne, and these people setting up easy narrative part for a third film. Conversely, the pictures could be taken as a final epilogue for the character, prove that he was able to put down his weapons and take up tool to rebuild the family home. Given his endurance after the loss of his family and the pain of his battle, Sisu Road to Revenge is a fairly straightforward story about a man trying to move a building from Russia to Finland and allow to challenges his culture along the way. However, it's very much a movie that reckons with the untended legacy and lingering trauma. Corby is a killing machine, but he is also haunted by the memories of the family. He lost and struggled after constantly having to fight for his life. Dragunov and the Soviets want to break the illusion of the immortal, hoping to turn his unexpected legendary status into an asset of their own control by breaking him. Corpy's fury over his family's fate gives him the result to do some truly ridiculous thing, but it's also left him a quiet shell of a man who barely says a word across the film. Even his new neighbors recognizes just him, acknowledging that he can't speak to his trauma, even as he recognizes it and wants to help. Road to Revenge is a ridiculous action movie. However, it is also a movie about a man who has to keep moving, as slowing down will cost him the loss of his old family. It's a movie about the extreme land someone will go to for both vengeance and peace, and gives his Road to Revenge a quite emotional core. The most brutal Nazi killing franchise of the past few years is back with the Sisu Road to Revenge. It's changing up his story structure this time around. Once again written and directed by Jalmari Helander. The action sequel picked up 2 years after its acclaimed predecessor with Jorma and Tommy returning to his home, a richer man. Albeit still tormented by the brutal killing of his family during World War II at the hands of Soviet Red Army. Officer Igor Dragunov, played by the avatar Stefan Lang, looking to start his family and anew, now that the war is ending. Atomis dismantles his home and loads it all onto a truck, driving across Finland to find a peaceful new home to honor his family memory. However, in an effort to quell the legend of the man who refuses to die, the KGB released Dragunov and gave him near endless resources to hunt the Sisu protagonist down, resulting in an explosive race across the country. Having originally premiered at the Fantastic Fest in September 2025, Sisu Road to Revenge has then guaranteed near universal acclaim for critics, currently holding a 96% approval rating from critics on Rotten Tomatoes, who have praised the sequel for its inventive action and dark sense of humor. The movie has also gotten off to a strong start at the box office with its Finland premiere, grossing nearly $2 million against its $12 million production budget, while also being on track for a $3 million debut in its domestic opening weekend. Ahead of its movie's US release, Screen Rant's Grant Hermans interviewed Jalmari Helander and Stefan Lang to discuss Sisu. Road to Revenge, looking at the difference between the two movies, the structure in which the first could be compared to John Wick. Jalmari Helander, the idea that Assanis are trying to transport his home to a hostile territory, create actions any moment. Like in a road movie with a lot of action, it's entertaining to watch but will slow to shoot. When you have a lot of moving vehicle, cars, motorbikes, etc., and also all the cameras are moving, it is very time consuming and harder to rest for a new take. as the scale increased between the two films, and Helander had a bigger budget to work with. The writer director pointed to the big explosion as being the most exciting set pieces to put together, while citing the tourist as being the moment of all the vehicle, describing putting together the former. Helander said the key to pulling them off a lot of planning and work beforehand, especially given that on the day of the shoot. You only have one take and therefore have to hope that everything goes as planned. Another key evolution in Sisu. Road to Revenge story is unlike many other man arm action franchise. The sequel gives more insight into Tommy's backstory regarding his family's death and the person behind it. Helander explained the decor of the stage came from his protagonist getting his house back, feeling it to be so original, emotional, and right from the first second. I intended to have an idea that would match the first film and could have better to justify the film. This time is more personal and emotional and creates good action. Second trend. The cast of the first films was primarily Finnish, and again, you broadened the scope a bit here with Stefan Lang and the Richard Brake, two fantastic actors as your primary villain. How did a more international casting came about, and what you draw you to see those two in particular? I was thinking about someone younger at first, but when the idea came to have Stefan Lang, I immediately thought it was a great idea. And when I had my first conversation with him, it just felt pure. It was awesome to get break and link for Siso because Atomy could be really neat some badass actor for this film. Stephens, obviously you are no stronger, no playing villain. But every actor has a different way of getting into their villain head. Whether it's the physicality, whether it's their backstory, whether it's the voice, what did you find was the best way to get into Igor head in the film? As I recall, it had a lot to do with the kind of emptying myself out. I was really looking to kind of recreate kind of a void in my own self. And one of the ways I achieved that, I didn't enjoy. You mentioned the backstory. And obviously, the backstory of Igor Dragunov is not relevant to the narrative, in a sense, but it is relevant to my playing the role. So to be able to be create a character who is capable of such kind of gallows, good and is systematic evil. It's helpful to understand where that's coming from and how that came about. Once you realize that this is Gaius and has been formed the moment of his birth. A child of state that actually from a very early age. Well, that journey really make it all the more visceral once we got to a later point in the film. And Igor gets more involved in the action, especially when we finally get to see him and Atomy go against each other. I would love you to hear when it was like when you and Jorma family got to actually share a screen time and both mentally and physically go toe to toe with each other. It was a player because he's a terrific pro. I think we both, even without ever saying it, had a contract to look out for each other. Because if you think about it, we are talking about in the train. We are in an enclosed space there, and everything is broken and busted. There are shared or sharp edges and everything. Wherever you go, there's a dozen ways to hang yourself and hurt yourself. That's interesting because that creates a little bit of watch your attention, which I think is good. But working with him, we worked well together. It was a fine dude. Whenever we did go together, a lot of punches were thrown, a lot of forks were stabbed into our people, and both of us walked away from it feeling like we would done our job. And also we did not broke my limbs, either our own or our acting partner. I also loved his phone stab. I wanted to touch on the Igor stat because I was gratefully surprised by the sheer brutality, with the combination of the impaling him and blowing him up. How many iteration of a legendary death did you give him more crafting the script? I always thought you would die with the Miazal because that was the first idea with the train. I thought how cool it would be to ride on a train moving with a rocket engine of a big missile. So when I heard that, I know the missile would be seat of him. Stephen Lang's explosive ending in his Sisu to Revenge has been unpacked by director Jalmari Helander, who explained the real moment. Lang portrays Igor Dragunov, a Soviet officer who killed Atomist Jorma, family serving as the sequel's central antagonist. Sisu to Revenge and with Igor getting blown up by a ballistic missile on a train that atomic activities. In an interview with the Screen Rants, Grant Hermanson's 42nd installment, Helander explained the reason behind Lang's Igor getting blown up with a missile in Sisu. Road to Revenge, the director stated, that was the first idea, thought for the train scene, making it inevitable that he would be killed in such a manner. Check out what Helander had to say below. Speaking of Igor's death, I was gleefully surprised by the sheer brutality of it with the combination of the warhead, impaling him and blowing him up. How many iterations of a legendary death did you give him when crafting the script? I always know he would die with the missile because that was the first idea with the train. I thought how cool it would be to ride on train moving with a rocket engine of a big missile. So when I heard that, I know the missile would be the seat of him. The train sequences was the biggest element of Sisu. Road to Revenge's ending, with Tommy originally using the missile as a booster to catch up to fleeing Igor. The pair fight, with Lang's character almost besting the protagonist. Luckily, the missile is still armed, killing Igor and allowing Tommy to go back to Finland. He is revenge satisfied. Review for Sisu Road to Revenge have emphasized the major amount of violence in the sequel. This included a number of creative death scenes for numerous characters, mostly canon footage as Atomy attempt to go Igor. The antagonist, however, had the most furious death of all, befitting a high octane. Road to Revenge holds a 96% rating on Rotten Tomatoes from critics as of writing. The readily available praise of the film's action scene is what makes it stand out among others in the genre. As Helander stated, the missile that was a foundational idea for the train scene. The grounded action film won't be the only villain role Lang has in the movies this year. Given how memorable Sisu Road to Revenge made it a major villain that it's clear Helander and the team behind the movie have a knack for crafting brutal, yet satisfying that scene. It makes action stand out in the market, while also delivering on a fitting conclusion for the second chapter of Atomic Story. A sleeper hit in 2022, Jalmari Helander Sisu was a cartoonishly down and dirty underline rush for action fans, not unlike the OG Mad Max. Decades earlier, their particular comparison grown even more apache with the arrival of Sisu Road to Revenge, in which Jorma Tommila seemingly unlikable protagonists must battle innumerable bad guys at high speed on various forms of transport. Bigger is not unnecessarily better, and the larger scale sequel almost immeasurably like some of the freshness that made the original such a kick. Still, the director's undeniable flair for gleefully excessive mayhem and purposely pacing will more than satisfy those who loves his predecessor. It comparatively lean. Main progress feels particularly welcome after so many recent screen rides that it delivered for less punch at much greater length and expense. Last time around, the commensurate Finnish army commando Atomic Corpi only wanted to left alone as Vadvaju wound down. Finding gold in the Lapland tundra awakened the greed of departing Nazi forces with zero idea who they were messing with a one-man dead scare. Or would be already claimed many a unfarmed Russian life after Soviet forces killed his family during the brief but brutal. This time the terrifyingly fit 60-something protagonist is encountered in 1946. The global conflict how officially well over. He is driving in a huge truck to his old home, which thanks to redrawn brothers now lies in Russian territory. He intended to dismantle, then resemble it in what remains of Finland. But Soviet authorities have not forgotten that his legend snubbed out more than 300 of their troops. Red Army officer Igor Dragunov is released from a Siberian prison, where he is being held for committing innumerable needless wartime by a KGB bigwig to ensure Atomy never sees Finnish soil again. The two adversaries are uniquely matched. Inakorpin knows the utter brutality murdered his wife and son, while Ragnar won't feel he is a truly completed job until the father is dead too. This setup takes about 10 minutes, after which it's one dynamic set pieces after another. Atomy managed to escape an initial roadblock ambush, then attacked by the motorcyclist, followed by a fighter plane with a machine gun. After a brief aquatic interlude, there is a portrait climax about a train speeding back to Siberia, bearing myriad armed Soviet plus one blooded. Shackled prisoner needless to say. The several odds are stacked against a poor case, that is, divided into the six title chapter. These episodes are mostly acts in a drama of staging, stunt work and CGI. Occasionally, heavy violence comes so thick, we are not quite sure that just happened, and even within these suspended. These brief bonds established. A few hairbreadth escape are preposterous, notably one where Tommy make a attempt to mid-air acrobatics to leap past the barrier. Entertaining as it is, such craziness is not so well spotted by a thread of black. Comedy is as within was in Sisu. You could also argue there is a bit too much dwelling on general likeness here, as a manliest man in the fore not seem to be frequently digging bullet another object out of his flesh, spending pretty much the last half hour bleeding in boxer short amid Wagner better appear not to bother him in the slightest. But Tomila's turn retains a degree of plenty humor, even some warm despite never getting so much as a word to speak. Lang's expletively rattled speech comprises most of the dialogue. If Dragnov is not the most distinctive villain role he's ever assessed, he still fills his shows well, receiving a particularly explosive exit as reward. Breakspot is brief, while later cast memorable provide no more than coin fodder. Decani performers playing the protagonist terrible disappear for quite some time, in one among several minor of this plot hole in the Helander script that is the best just to stop ever. Shot largely Estonia Sisu wrote to the revenge, rather than the integrating in the most aspect from Micah or Zama's wider screen. Cinematography to the physical design contribution. The fairly stunted action bombast of Jody Sappa and Thomas' originally score gets some flavor via passage of throat singing and spectre. Finnish writer-director Jalmari Helander Sisu 2022. Satip John World War II and actioner. The play like John Wick by way of the bastard. Balance is the narrative shredness with the generally blood-letting. It's the kind of movie where the main character, Artemin Corby, survives an underwater assault by slitting a Nazi's throat and breathing it through his windpipe. Sisu's cartoonish violence, animated by some cheaper than they work look visual effect, made the movie slight B-movie destined for cult status on Rome. Rome was a fear to come. Yet in that film's Highlanders for violent spectacle eventually reached the point where it all became noise. To say it's equal to cleaner, meaner Cicero to revenge. Truly scale things back would be wrong, but Highlanders does while his recipe down to the essential, allowing the weekend's world building to evaporate and his technical proficiency for cleanly sales shows to be taken. Road to Revenge is a follow-up, so relentlessly efficient that it cannot even be budget to give its third lead character a proper name. Road to Revenge picks up 2 years after the original. World War II has ended and Atomy, the so-called one-man death seeker, is on the road onto his homeland of Karelia, now occupied by the Soviet Union, with his trusty terror in the passenger seat. Atomy drives his flatboat across the desolate Finnish countryside before crossing the border into enemy territory. There are fewer hanged men on the side of the road these days, but still plenty of danger as the Red Army fortifies its no domination. His mission is to domicile his family cottage log by log, load our lumber into the truck, and find a quiet plow to rebuild. His presence at the border allowed the aforementioned and nameless KGB officer currently stationed at a Siberian prison, while most, if not all, of the window dressing from the first movie, gold prospecting any female character, is left for the vulture. Atom's infamy as a one-man Soviet killing machine has not. Legend has it that Atomy once killed 100 of Soviet, and even the war is over. They would like some playback. It's not Atomy who traveled the road to revenge, but rather the man this nameless officer sent to take him out. Igor Dragunov, the man who killed Atomy's family, with a shovel. For all its native grace, the road to the revenge leaves make murder seem just a little bit more evil than all the other killing. Broken into 5 chapters, each starts with the western that humanized the video of Annius. A road to revenge carefully escalates Atomy's trial. It's not long after he loaded his vehicle with his dissemble that Dragunov's goon catch up to the Atomy, who's trained to protect his former home in tow as the Soviet lay siege by the ground and air. But even as he moves from the set pieces to set pieces, each defined by a different vehicle, and in many ways you can die in one. It's a Highlander's grasp of the fundamental that make Road to the Revenge such a bloody delight. The odes to George Miller are apparent in Highlander's overtopped missed laughter and narrative efficiency. They are also present in a cherry clarity of the Micah Osama's cinematography, which is an instant. Zooms for Jaren's smiling inspired moment of natural grace. There is a bold coherence and gravity to Road to Revenge's carnage, which make the action more painful and satisfying to behold. Highlander's composition take on the grammars of silent film, thanks to the Tomila's pained non-verbal performances and editing which has the crispness of veteran stand-up, crackling with the set pieces that the audiences can't wait to hear pay off. Elite film sequences aboard a Soviet train take an excellent advantage of a battalion, a sleeping soldier dozing and turning in their bunk. Their failing arms transformed into a human security system. Atomy becomes a characterbuster curtain as he advances through each precious sequences. Even better, Atomy's Bug Bunny inspired violence is rarely unearned, making it even more satisfying than its predecessor, which revealed in the kinds of the video game mayhem better suited for GIF than films. Road to Revenge makes sure there's a clear heightening for moment to moment, rather than it magnified as a new landscape, a new weapon, or a tank outfitted with explosive. Sisu Road to Revenge is a simply more refined and enjoyable version of his predecessor, by shaving what little for fat remained than on his initial idea. He rendered craft an action movie that does more with loss. There are moments when the sequel nearly overdoes it. When Highlander's thirst for blood threatens no overpower the film, yet in the simplicity it finds a steady rhythm that weakens gradually. Peak and reset. It is not a profound or enlightening, but for 89 minutes, it drives the Fury Road, confidently flipping tank and unleashing hell along the way. There is both coherence and gravity to Road to Revenge's carnage, which make the action more painful and satisfying to behold. Highlander's composition take on grammars of silent film, thanks to Tomila's pained non-verbal performances and Valencian editing, which has the fashion stand-up cracking with a setup that the audiences can't wait to hear payoff. In Sisu Road to Revenge, Jalmari Helander's violent sequel 2023, Sony had to go. Atomic Corpi moved himself for the bloody road trip action flick. They saw Lionsgate effort to cultivate Atomic Corpi as their next John Wick. Like a child in the kingdom who was tired of sharing these toys, Sony's productions company Stage 6 screamed, "No mine." Who needs a plot when you have the man who refuses to die as your hero? I am being facetious, of course, but not as much as it might think. The first time we met at Tommy, he was just trying to live his solitary life. He walked by his side and riches in his stature. He was content. Of course, as life would have it, there is often people who can't manage their own damn business. The people in this particular story just happen to be Nazis. Too bad for him. He was a man they perceived as alone and an all too easy target for their cruelty. Little did they know who they were fucking with. If you have seen what had transpires, you know it didn't end well of clicks in. And if you thought that would be the end of the day, are not alone in thinking so. But here we are in 2025, and the man, the myth, the legend himself, has returned for some much needed as it most brutal and discerning. He is quite spirit, but a genuine demon if crossed. And who is dumb enough to ruin this man's day this time? The Soviet Union, of course. A commander of Red Army to be specific. What we discover in this is a man that is widely considered the person that created what would ultimately become the myth of the man who refuses to die by killing his entire family during wartime. An insatiable fire was it within the army that will likely never burn out. Recently released from prison on the grounds that he will finish the job and kill Atomy. Igor Dragunov is the culprit of this man's greatest agony, but all Atomy wants to is dismantle the home he is firmly lived in and rebuild it elsewhere, and to live the rest of his life in peace. The Russians have other plan and they will wish they did not. Start out small. Our joy in the water, so to speak, before diving all the way. In eager learns quickly not everything changes. The man that does not speak has not grown any less formidable or any less cold-blooded. After the initial reunion, Yeager opens the float gate. Fasten Wheel is a unit of armored motorcycle soldier who realizes very late that a truck is very built-up weapon as a pistol. It's all in how you detailed it. Then comes an attack from the air, and for a time they get the better of him. But he is never out of long. Their paths connect them, out his vegans will savor that threat with the extreme prejudice. This is road to revenge. There is a lot of influences throughout his movie's DNA. Spaghetti Western from Sergio Leone, and a resulting sequel of Johan Rombo's journey. It's a spiritual successor of Mad Max, Bastard, and perhaps most obvious, John Wick. It calls on the inspiration of these stories to build what is simple in premise but never lacking in intensity and pacing. This is pure fan services, and so often this is seen in negative light. It's not what you might call a masterpiece, but it does exactly what you promised to do, and is some. Is it all right with you? Sisu and the sequel are for the bloodthirsty. Action episode. I, for one, am thriller that cult action gem Sisu 2022 has found a sequel. This time, Jalmari Helander scared, stoic, silent action hero Ajami Gorpi. They awesomely dispense multiple foes in ways appropriate to this film's bigger budget. But instead of facing Nazis this time, he is up against multiple goons from Stalin's Russia. A brief prologue explains how Finland had to go said land to the Soviet Union after World War II. Unfortunately, from Korpi, part of the land lost in where his family lived before they were. A brief prologue explains how Finland had to decide land to the Soviet Union after World War II. Unfortunately for Korpi, part of the land lost in where his family part lived before they were murdered by Igor Dragunov and a Red Army officer who went up bad nuts with a shovel and he chopped them into the little pieces. A trip down memory lane to rescue a lorry load of wooden beams from his old home. So Korpi might build a new house within Finland, new borders, resulting in Dragunov being instructed to hunt him down. Cue set pieces after set pieces of hugely entertaining, ultra-violent mayhem, with Korpi determined to get to the border with his beam, come hell or high water. Not to mention bullets, bombs, missiles, trucks, tanks, trains, planes, and a plethora of human cannon fodder. Channel fans of understand that none of this violence is meant to be taken seriously. In real life, there is obviously no way Corby could survive the intense level of brutality meted out to him. In a particular nasty, needless to say, Corby gives as good as he gets and then some. Living up to the title, as before, the film informs us that Sisu is an untrustable Finnish word that refers to stoic determination and resilience in the face of the unprecedented hardship. There are some here that had me awed and giggling like a 12 years old who would be snuck out into an age-restricted film. Speaking of which, I am astonished this got passed by the British Board of Film classification with a 15 rather than an 18 certificate, but action spans will suspend disbelief are the same, especially with thrilling sequences. This expertly choreographed. Coming into 2025, Sisu Road to Revenge was one of my most anticipated films of the year. I loved the first Sisu and judging by the trailer, it looked like the sequel would be just as good, if not better. It promised to retain everything that made the original movie such a blast while also upping the end, and that was music to my ear. I could not wait to see another bloody adventure with my favorite Finnish action hero, so when tickets went on sale, I booked a seat for opening day as soon as I got a chance. Sisu Road to Revenge was written and directed by Jalmari Helander and starred Jorma, Stephen Lang, and Richard Brake in the film's atomic copy. The Finnish soldier who killed hundreds of Russian combatants during World War II has gone back into the Soviet territory to reclaim the home he once knew. See, the land used to belong to Finland, but after the war, that entire area was given to Russia. Of course, Tommy does not want to live in the Soviet Union, so he dismantled the house, puts the logs on his truck, and drives back to his home country. But along the way, he runs into some Russians who want him dead, and the only way to stop them is to kill them first. Right off the bat, I want to let you know that you don't need to see the original Sisu to watch Road to Revenge. This is a standalone sequel in this vein of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and Glass Onion. An ease-out mystery, so it's equally accessible to the newcomer and Sisu fans alike. You just need to be a fan of great action, and if you fit that bill, I think you're going to love this movie. Once the mayhem starts, Sisu Road to Revenge keeps its foot on this gag until the credit begin to roll. Sure, it stops to take a short breather every now and then, but you will never have to wait long for the pace to pick up again. At first, the film is very reminiscent of the two best made Max flick, The Road Warriors and Fury Road. Pretty much the entire first half is just a dummy trying to drive back to Finland. So whenever the Russians go on the attack, you can't help but think of Max and Furiosa driving a big rig down a desert highway. Don't get me wrong, Sisu Road to the Revenge does not quite reach the dead, defying height of those stone cold classic, but it's pretty damn good. Seeing a charming think fast and creatively right through his Soviet stalkers in his thing of bloody beauty. And I mean bloody. And when the movie switches gear around the midway point, it does not lose a single step. In particular, the second half of this film really highlights the concept that gives the franchise its name. Sisu is a Finnish word that refers to an unbreakable grit and intensity, even in the face of seemingly impossible obstacles, and Atomy is a pretty much the living embodiment of that. I am not going to spoil anything, but I will say that if you think John Rambo stitching himself up in First Blood is impressive, just wait till you see what Atomy does here. He exhibits an almost superhuman resolve, and actor Jorma brilliantly brings that unflinching determination to life. With body language and facial expression alone, Atomy has no dialogue in Road to Revenge. Lets you know he is not one to be trifled with. So a single look from this guy is more than enough to put the fear of God into anybody who gets in his way. Anybody that is except the movie's villain, a Soviet officer named Igor Dragunov. He is played by Stefan Lang, and Lang is just as good as his heroic counterpart. He imbues the character with the same kind of fearless that makes Tommy such a great protagonist. But he transports it into a much more sinister key. Everything this man says and does is dripping with the unwavering. So that anybody can take Tommy down its him. All being said, I don't want you to think so. Road to Revenge is a pure shot of that adamant line with no underlying substances. As the title suggests, this is a revenge film. But it's also more than that. It's a story of a man who was deeply affected by the loss of his life and gears. And Jorma, near a sad side of character as well. When Tommy first returned home and the memories of his family come floating back, Tommila is not afraid to let the character's emotions overwhelm him. He shows that even a man can try when he thinks back to the family that was so cruelly ripped away from him. And as a man myself, I really appreciated that. It's easy to view the Sisu franchise as little more than a hollow exercise in the beast brand out of toxic. But seeing a Tommy experience genuine emotion shows there is more to manhood than just beer, brawn, and babies. On the flip side, I did have one issue with Sisu, A Road to Revenge. As much as I love the action, there are a couple of times when it stretches the bounds of cruelty a bit too far. I can't get into a specifiers without spoiling some of the fun, but I can tell you what the worst offender involves an airplane and few perfectly placed log. It's just too much to swallow even in a movie like this. So I wish writer director Jalmari Helander and he retained it just a little. Thankfully the good is say so. Road to Revenge far outweighed that one flaw. The excellent action, great character, and surprising thematic substances make this film everything I was hoping for and even a little more. Granted, it's not for everyone, but if bloody action cinema is your wheelhouse, I highly recommend that you check this movie out. You ever wonder what would happen if Mad Max Fury Road me Fast and the Furious franchise? That, my friend, is Jalmari Helander's Sisu, A Road to Revenge. If I had a week, I could not tell you all of the ways Helander's sequel goes balls to the wall of nearly every second of its runtime. To be fair, I would not want to. Road to Revenge is one of those films that is absolutely essential to watch on the biggest screen possible, with the largest crowd that you can find it. The first time is good, filing a charming copy on his journey to cash in gold through Nazi-occupied Finland, but it's not great. It delivered on the brutality it promised, but everything about the first film, which to be clear, I enjoyed left me wanting more. A Road to Revenge is that more and then some, with the primary reason that you need to see it in the theater being that you deserve to hoot and holler at the screen the way the fantastic first crowd did as a Tommy absolutely most through anyone standing in this way. There are at least 3 terms in my notes, with about 15 underlines under them because the moment was so big. Appropriately, Road to Revenge's journey is little but different than the first films. It's more personal, which only makes the violence all the more delightful earned. A Road to Revenge takes place in 1946, 2 years after the original. Tommy has returned to the shell of his home, where his family was brutally murdered during World War II. The sudden battle-tried soldier slowly demolishes the home piece by piece, taking care to stack the lumber on the back of truck with the intent to take it Finland, and able to live out the rest of his days with his trust pope. You see, Dragunov is the man who slaughtered Tommy's family, chopping them up piece by piece to save illumination. He was captured at the end of the war, and he does not take too kindly to the fact that Tommy has become a legend across the land. Sisu Road to Revenge is split into 5 chapters, each one more delightfully unhygienic than the last. The set pieces in these films are impeccable in the most beautiful way possible. It ends with a very single aspect of the first film, both in the dancer Tommy and his faithful pop face, and the absolute hell he unleashes on those who wronged his family and dare to stand in way of his goal. Most importantly is that it looks good in doing it. Allowed action is a non-singly extreme, but it looks so good that I fully believe a single man could accomplish all of the things Atomy does with a strong grasp of physics and a can-do attitude. Nonetheless, better may find it harder to buy it into. As I alluded earlier, it's not just the amplified action that makes his road to revenge bigger and better than its predecessor, but the heart as well. Tommila delivers another completely silent performances as he's a single line at the end of Sisu. But there are no closing words for the William this is go around. This time with his character's sadness playing just as critical of a role as his rage. Before he was a man just trying to cash in his gold. Now he's a man just trying to rebuild after war revenge his region and destroyed his family. He slaughtered a lot of Nazis and more than a few red. He's tired, his dog is tired, and they just want some well earned peace. The longing plays to in spade and is beautifully woven with the sadness that comes along the way of his incomparable. The unjust expositions of violence and sadness in the script require one hell of a score. The composer is not listed anywhere just yet. The release worldwide until 21 November, but the old one hell of a job elevating very second of action, board sweeping and shouting. The music of Sisu Road to Revenge is essential to elevating this late to speechless and the action explosively. While bombastic at every turn, it's Sisu Road to Revenge ending that ends up being the ultimately piece to give any narrative hint would do what you any film deserve. But where the rest of the film is loud, it is quiet. Frankly, it's also billion adjective that would, unfortunately, give too much way. Suffice to say that you go to war with Atomy across the two films, and in the end, its closing moment are unusually perfect experience of anyone who's been along on the journey. Sisu Road to Revenge ended up being my absolute favorite film, a fantastic fest, and it was up against safe competition with the like Black Phone 2. Good luck, have fun, don't die, and one battle after another. It is big in every way it needs to be big, and small in the way that it needs to be small. Performances in both neck and the heartbreaking, and Stephen Long is our the perfect monster on screen. He landed absolutely out it himself here. Just be prepared for a real wide ride. One of the most shocking and surprising action hits in years was 2022 Sisu and its new sequel. Sisu Road to Revenge is proving to be even more popular with a high Rotten Tomato score from both critics and audiences. In a time when action movies are being out a cookie cutter family, Sisu was a war movie, a revenge movie, and an action movie that put an old man into one of the most brutal battles of survival seen on screen for many years. Audiences and critics were united in their praise for the movie, and it frequently appeared in the top 10 on streaming charts 3 years later. Not a sequel, Sisu Road to Revenge has arrived in the cinema and is blowing away many high praise of its predecessor. MovieWeb's own Lee calls the sequel a bonker, blood-soaked sequel fans have been waiting for, and has seemed to be a good summation of the film that has somehow managed to live up to the hype of the first movie. The synopsis of Sisu Road to Revenge reads: Sisu Road to Revenge is well to wall cinematic action event, a sequel to the original sleeper hit Sisu, returning to the house where his family was brutally murdered during the war. The man who refuses to die is lured on a truck and is determined to rebuild it somewhere safe in their honor. When the Red Army commander who killed his family come back hellbent on finishing the job. A relentless eye-popping cross-country chases ensues to fight to the death full of clever, unbelievable action set pieces. While there are many movies that have been accused for ignoring the law of physics, defying logic and requiring a suspension of disbelief that even the most accommodating moviegoers cannot quite buy into. Sisu wrote to revenge flies in the face of dissent, make the carnage of George Miller's made Max movies look like a gentle period drama. On its debut, the sequel is getting on a 95% score and 90% popcorn meter rating, both of which have stepped up in our notice from Sisu. Audiences have been similarly positive, saying the sequel takes a raw intensity of the first movie and turns it into Sisu versus Mad Max, Quentin, and MCU explosion. Sisu wrote reviews even managed to remind some reviewer the controversial Fast and Furious space exploration. But in this movie is absolutely ridiculous and I am here for it. Sisu is currently available to stream for free on YouTube and is worth watching before getting out to be cinema to watch even more bunker sequel to Bloody Glory. There is obviously no streaming date available for Sisu. Road to Revenge yet, but he will be sure to let you know when it is announced. John Lewis said that all you need to make a movie is girl, and again, Finnish director Helander respectfully disagrees. He needs to no girl at all, as long as he has a lot of gun and a wieldy inventory approach to construction material. At least we can assume as much from this wizard action sequel. We see this legendary hero go absolutely nuclear on a global superpower. 2022 Sisu told a tale of one Finn. Jorma's gold prospector atomy, demolishing a battalion of Nazis with extreme prejudice in the dying days of World War II. A silver of backstory established that he had previously gone one-man army against the Red Army because they slaughtered his family. Now the even more heavily scared hero crosses into USSR territory, annexed from the Finland immediately after the war, on a personal mission to his old homestead. His arrival prompted the Soviet power to open a prison in Siberia and release Igor Dragunov, held there for his part in that long ago massacre of Atommy's family. Dragunov, he is told, must go and kill Atomy and bury the legend that he helped create, avenging the honor of Regmi. Dragunov has the sense to swiftly enlist a few hundred disposable goons to accompany him. He will need them because Atommy's little way with a found object puts even John Wick to shame. Anyone can kill a guy with a pencil. It takes real invention to crash a plan with a plank of wood. Every sub-object on screen here except. Perhaps some of the grass becomes an instrument of that at some point. It's all big old iron truck and leftover war tools and the Cold War weapon. And Atomy is fluent in all of them, even if he never says a word. Helander's filmmaking is as lean as his hero. There are quick moments of scene setting at the beginning and at the end, and it is also minute. In between of non-stop mayhem, he builds character into the action. Atomy needs to get his cargo home as well as himself, and that determination tells you more about him than any number of as he set his job and enters free engage the latest challenger. You can be sure that there will be blood. What happened for the explosive sequel of a meeting action bureau? One asks for Sisu. To be this good usually sequels experiences, diminishing return, where the directors debate what worked in the films without offering much beyond an effective formula that audiences enjoy the first time and will likely enjoy again. However, in Sisu Road to Revenge, Finnish filmmakers Jalmari Helander refuses to repeat his initial installment and instead make everything more violent and accelerating, turning the gritty revenge tale of the silent atomy into a playful and operating Saturday morning cartoon. Of course, who believe cinema should only survive to be an illusion of reality. We'll hear this movie, especially during a brawling sequences that does both the fast and furious, and a corpus of SS proud. But you honestly gives a damn about logic and realism when you have got it in an relentless minute. A one coolest thing ever after Helander. Helander fragments like story into a six chapter. It seems more like a distraction that hampered the movie's flow when it gets going. Because it does not take long for Sisu. Road to Revenge to switch interaction mode and never let up from there. In fact, there are no tangible moments of respite as soon as Helander craft a car to chase worthy of Mad Max and cranks up the Swedish pacing action set pieces. It's all Blake and unrelenting like the first, but quickly become more comedic as the Tommy must find clever ways to defeat the Darless Red Army and the dangerously unhinged officer in his pursuit. All of it is but it is obviously white work. And the fact is, and that is so, Road to Revenge is mostly a silent movie that harkens back to the work of the Buster Keaton is for Highlander benefit. He does not need dialogue to tell a story or to represent intense emotions as bad guys are gloriously in thousand different ways. He let his images speak for themselves and his camera, with cinematographer and Mike Orsama, is much better controlled than in the first film. The images have a more. In Road to Revenge, Highlander seemed to be understand that while the dramatic core at the heart of Atomi's revenge is not fun, everything around it can be. As such, its style must respond to that specific tone and not to be afraid to get in the process. Since it's pure fun and camera should be playful, and the entrance cutting from Joho should add extra to how the action scenes are captured and choreographed. Luckily, Hernandez as seriously his skill as genre artist and Helma for more confident entry than the rest of his fiery filmography. It's refreshing to see a filmmaker take his criticism to heart and work to refine his static impulses, rather than make the same thing but with a different antagonist than in the first. There is an active desire to do something different while also giving more what audiences liked from the first installment, namely Jorma leaning further into the comedy, as in the flourish we get from him in the prior entry. The 89 minutes feature is packed with the endless braver sequences designed to make the audiences stare, hoot, and holler, and forget about what vast illusion of reality that most movies try to preserve. Every set pieces get more cartoonish, to the film's benefit leading up to a trained sex climax that feels redundant at first glance, but it's so thrillingly entertaining one can't help but have a smile on their face. Balances out actors the plastic comedy to build up tension so ridiculously in your face. Conclusion feels like a proper send off to the protagonist who will hopefully build a more peaceful life by the time he is done exacting the most popcorn chewing from the revenge you can think of.